Good day, everyone. For this particular session or meeting, we are going to tackle or discuss about IT deployment risk. This is actually the fourth chapter of the course, Auditing in a CIS Environment. So together with me is my student, which I'm very excited about. She is April Rose. Actually, she will be the one discussing the chapter, but then I'm going to be listening and I'm also going to give some input should there be a need to add more or give in-depth discussions of certain parts of the chapter. All right. So I've decided to have this like part one and part two. It is because like last time the video was very lengthy. So expect this to be of two parts. And now we will have Miss April Rose there. So hopefully she is visible. And then let us listen to her in 3, 2, and 1.
Hello, this is April Rose Bungcag
Hi, April Rose.
to report about the IT deployment risk. So this chapter discusses the various risks associated with deployment and information technology in organization and ways in which can cope with such risk in IT strategic planning and IT project management or any area of the organizations. So managing strategic plans. Strategic planning serves as the primary guideline for allocating scarce resources throughout the firm and keeping the organization headed in the profitable direction. In long-term planning,
Oh, by the way, for a while, so before we continue, what do you mean by the word deployment? Actually, deployment simply means putting the resources into effective or efficient action or purpose or direction. So we want the resources of the company to be employed in such a way that they would be producing the best or optimal results for the company as a whole, such that the IT itself as a department would contribute to the bigger company as a whole. So that's the point of deployment. We want IT to be put into use in such a way that it will be producing the best results for the company or business. All right, so let's continue.
is one of the effective means of minimizing the risk that organizational resources will be used in ways that are incongruent with the company's overall goals and objectives. So this is the table of the planning process. Vision. It represents what might be based on a set of goals and objectives the organization would like to achieve. And in mission statement becomes the catalyst for strategic planning.
Okay, for a while. So before April Rose will continue to that, so let me go back to the illustration. Okay, this illustration, I slipped. It's quite challenging to go back. Anyway, this illustration would show to us that the company vision down to policies, these are the specific orders by the way of the level. So from the vision, which is the topmost, the most abstract form of the direction of the business, and then going down to the more concrete, if not the most concrete. So vision, mission, objectives, strategy, and policies. We can make an acronym which is VMOSP. So this order is the company as a whole, is for the company as a whole. And then for the IT being a separate function and department, it also has its own VMOSP, vision, mission, objectives, strategy, and policies. Now, these two should be aligned with each other. So the company vision must be aligned, of course, with the information technology and vice versa, but the more on the latter to the former because IT is a component of the business as a whole. So the IT plans must complement and support the company plans. So they have to be aligned in order to be congruent to the goals of the business, as explained a while ago. All right, so let us continue.
Within functional areas of the firm, as the goals and objectives of each area must support and promote the overall mission. The objectives serve as the foundation for setting an explicit IT strategy. So the objectives, it creates an atmosphere that embraces innovation and change, and to apply computer hardware and software technologies to opportunities that promote prosperity, and incorporate an enterprise-wide information system to facilitate the intra-company coordination of business activities. And four, develop a technology-based communication network capable of linking suppliers, customers, and employees into a seamless, virtual, and extended enterprise. In strategy, details how IT function will achieve its objectives throughout its organizational structure, relationships with others, and IT configurations.
All right, so good. This is throughout.
And the policies designed to enact the realization of the strategy.
All right. So if you can notice with the flow, that only means that those at the bottom would realize those at the top. So example, the first is vision. Again, as what I've said, that's the most abstract level. So this means that mission will help realize the vision. Objectives will help realize the mission. Strategies will help realize the mission and or the objectives, of course. That's the next level. Then strategies will help realize the objectives, as what I've said, and policies will help realize the strategy. So VMOSP, those at the next level, what I meant, would help achieve those at the prior. So I hope you get that point.
So the important areas for IT functions are these. Planning policies. It is set the framework under which decision on planning applications are made. In organizational policies, this purpose of this is to help your organizational tie together your mission, vision, values, and culture into clearly written and easily accessible documents for all employees to take to the heart. So the human resources policies are continuing guidelines on the approach of which an organization intends to adopt in managing its people. And in software policies, articulates what software is permitted on enterprise devices and who authorizes and carries out the installation test. And in hardware policies, it provides requirement for IT procurement, inventory, the management processes which are required to assure that IT met the control sufficient to protect assets critical to organizations.
All right, that's great. So planning, that's on the half right of the policies, important policy areas for IT deployment. So planning is on how do we set up the vision, mission, goals, objectives of the organization. Organization would be the company as a whole, the human resources for the people. Software will be as to the acquisition of the intangible components of the computer as to what we will use in our IT processes, for example, like the accounting softwares if we are on the accounting fields. Hardware will be on the, as said, the procurement, which is very important, of the appropriate tangible components like the computers themselves to be used in the IT processes, because these are very important areas to think about.
And in network policies is a collection of rules that govern the behavior of networks devices, just as a central government may lay down policies for state or districts to follow the achieve national objectives. Network administrators defines policies for the network device to follow to achieve business objectives. And in security policies, it is to secure the system and the organization, and it is to protect the organization from threats, including computer risk. So, in operation policies, in general directives whose purpose is to regulate the assistance provided by the bank to its borrower, define development strategies, and provide a high-level guide for operational decisions.
Yeah, very important thing is that the operations policies would be the specific guidelines as to the specific also processes in the organization. So operations could be on production, on, for example, would be the selling aspect, the administration aspect, and many other areas in the operations, most especially with the functional departments like purchasing, like finance, accounting. So these has or they have to be laid down so that such would be easier for the company to do the deployment. And very important, the IT deployment, of course, being the complementary or support aspect of the overall company VMOSP. All right.
And in the contingency policies, it is to provide insurance protection on a conventional basis with added benefits of allowing the insured client to the participate in sharing of underwriting profits and implementation of sound risk management policies. And in financial and accounting policies are specific principles and procedures implemented by a company's management team that are used to prepare its financial statement. Next is the risk. The key planning risk indicators. These are the number 1, a strategic planning process is not used. Number 2, information technology risks are not assessed. Next is investment analysis are not performed.
So these are the planning risk indicators, which means that they are the red flags or they are the indications that there are certain areas which are already risky in terms of planning. So I am in a way expecting that the reporter would be expounding, for example, at least like certain components of the enumeration. But anyhow, let us just give what is due. For this one, I will be explaining some parts. Example is number 1, which is easy. A strategic planning is not used, especially the process itself. So strategic, which means long term, because that's our point of view in business from the word strategy. So it actually details the specific processes that have to be employed in the business. So The strategy is very important then. Now, the strategic planning process supposedly would be laying down as to the specific objectives that there are, the goals and objectives for IT deployment, then the resources to be employed, and then the agents of who will be doing them. So it's going to be very detailed. But if this is not utilized or used, that would be a red flag for the IT deployment. Then another one is information technology risks are not assessed. So the risks are not evaluated properly. In that case, remember in chapter 3, the risks can be minimized by the use of controls. So certain controls cannot be diagnosed to the risks properly, or they cannot be employed or deployed to minimize the risks because the risks are not diagnosed properly prior to the diagnosis of the controls, right? Because risks are diagnosed first before the controls. So that's very important. And then investment analysis are not performed. When we place our money in the business, we have to make sure that the benefits must exceed the costs, or the benefits must outweigh the costs. Otherwise, then we are on the losing end, which is something that we have to avoid in the business. Anyway, let us listen to the reporter once again.
Formed. Quality assurance reviews are not conducted. Plans and goals are not communicated. Also, information technology personnel are disgruntled. And software applications do not support business processes. And also, the risk indicators, the technology infrastructure is inadequate. The user community is unhappy with the level of support. And lastly, the management's information needs are not met. So these are the...
All right, so I think the reporter wouldn't be discussing them anyway. So that's why I picked like 3, and let me just pick 2 more. So this one here, this is a human element or factor. Information technology personnel are disgruntled. So this simply means that personnel are not happy about their work. So there could be many reasons as to why, but then, human beings are people, so they are also affected by moods, the emotions, the setups, the environment or background. So let's just say one area of that is, let's say, for the benefits that they have received from the company. So they are disgruntled in that sense. So that's why it can affect also the planning, because how can you plan properly, or how can you set or lay down the strategic planning process properly if you, as the very persons who will be doing the planning, are not happy about what you are doing, right? So you cannot give the best analysis that you can provide or give. So that's my point for number 6. And for number 7, software applications do not support business processes, which is very dramatic, I would say, and alarming. Why? Because you have the processes there, and supposedly you should have acquired the software that would support or answer the needs for these processes, because it is needs based in business. There are needs that have to be responded by certain software applications, for example, for IT. So that is an alarming thing. But for the other items there, you guys, I know, can really also give your inputs, or can also research if needed for such. All right, so let us continue.
Okay, planning risk indicators. Next, professional guidance. So these are the guidance. 1, develop a strategic plan. 2, articulate the information architecture. 3, find an optimal fit between IT and the company's strategy. 4, design the IT function to match the company's needs. Next, maximize the IT investment. Next, communicate IT policies to the user. Then manage the IT workforce. Then comply with external regulations, laws, and contracts. Next, conduct IT risk assessments, then maintain a high-quality systems development process. Lastly, incorporate sound project management techniques.
Okay, so for these particular items on the steps as discussed a while ago and the professional guidance. So if ever you are given here, for example, the list, you may just group them and summarize them by saying that these three, for example, are on the planning and so on. Also, that is when, for example, you don't have the luxury of time of explaining. Or if, for example, you cannot like give very detailed explanations. Anyhow, if you can notice, so you begin with the plan, then you can be very specific about it as you go lower. So second would be you articulate, you now have to map out the specific setup for the plan. Then we have to make sure that the IT and the company strategy are actually aligned and we look for the optimal fit. So this is the best combination that would provide the best results. Then for number 4, we have to design the IT function also with the needs. Then maximize the IT investment on the point of producing the maximum benefits. Then we have to communicate IT policies to the user community in that sense. So who will be the users of the IT, for example, the applications or software applications, that we have to give the policies or guidelines to them so that they are well aware. Orientation is very important to avoid or minimize cases of future problems. Then management is very important to the users or the workforce and the employees for IT. Then we have to comply with the external regulations, the laws themselves, and certain contracts. For example, there are certain covenants or agreements for the usage of the software, so we have to be careful about such. Otherwise, we'll be susceptible to litigations. Then we also have to conduct IT risk assessment. So there are certain areas in IT that are more susceptible to risk, so we have to know them and evaluate them properly so that we can minimize. Then in developing the systems, then we should have the high quality or the high standard to maintain. And also with the management techniques of the project, they should be sound.
3. Find, communicate IT plans, develop.
Okay, so I think, all right.
Kaplan and Norton divide. So in IT function scorecard,
So for those who are already taking the management accounting or advisory services subjects, especially the part 2 or second part, there's a discussion in strategic management concepts or perspectives about the balanced with a D, balanced scorecard, which was introduced by Kaplan and Norton in 1996.
balanced scorecard concept. It is introduced by Kaplan and Norton in 1996. So the traditional financial metrics and the non-financial indicators. Kaplan and Norton devised 3-layer structure for each of 4 perspective. It is the mission, objectives, and the measure. IT functions scorecard. It is balanced scorecard concept that can be used to plan and monitor the performance of the IT functions. So next.
All right, so basically the balanced scorecard is the one that inspired the making of the IT function scorecard. So the IT function scorecard then borrows the concepts coming from the balanced scorecard, and it's just that the terms are changed, but the essence are basically the same, and it's just a matter of changing the perspective to an IT one.
Here, in the IT function strategy, we have the organizational contribution, user satisfaction, or operational performance, and adaptability. and scalability.
Scalability.
In
Scalability.
organizational contribution, you have the financial performance, with the return on investment, discounted cash flows of IT projects, and transaction cost. In user satisfaction, we have customer satisfaction, surveying users' attitudes toward system
Okay, so
reliability.
I think she is discussing already here the specific components, but we can just summarize this by saying that for organizational contribution, which is known as financial performance under the balanced scorecard, so we're just talking here about the numbers, perspectives, ROI, so the rates, the financial measures that we have known of, for example, in capital budgeting, in analyzing as to whether we should accept or reject the project or proposal or investment, then these are the things here. For user satisfaction, this is on the part of the customers or users as to whether they are able to get the satisfaction or the answer or the response that they want about the IT, for example, applications or softwares that they need for their specific jobs or works. Because this is on the IT function, meaning this is on the part of the users and on the ones or people who are employing or who are in charge with the IT. So to continue, we have the operational performance. This is now on the actual implementation aspect of the IT. So for example, I just have to pick one, like number of security breaches. So this number is very important because if security is compromised, that's going to be an issue about the integrity and the availability of the information of the business. Because if somebody hacks, what if we are prevented from having the access or getting the information on time or right away? So that's something that we should be careful about. So these are now the numbers. It's easier to analyze numbers, by the way, than words. We have known that also from our other subjects. So this is for the internal processes in balanced scorecard perspective. Operational performance for IT function. Then for adaptability and scalability, this is now on putting the best practices in use and in place, or if in place, then to the best use, producing the optimal results and producing such to the point that we are going to move forward and we are going to improve ourselves in the process towards continuous improvement called Kaizen. So in this case, the learning and growth perspective in the balanced scorecard is borrowed. So this is where all resources are expended on developing interfaces and they would be able to create new technology and we keep pace with IT growth. Remember, in every 6 months, as actually estimated or projected in discussions, that like in that time frame, at least 6 months, there would be certain developments or changes in technology. That's how dramatic it is, the changes in the IT landscape. So to continue.
Ability. So here, how to managing development programs is an application for project management techniques can minimize project-related risk. Project management life cycle. So here it is.
All right, so we can see here the specific steps in the management. So if we have the management functions from our management one or organization and management, planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So in managing projects, there are also steps to consider. So from planning, scheduling of the resources, we monitor how these resources are used. Then we control them to get feedbacks. We get the evaluation, and from evaluation, we get the feedbacks again or variances, comparing the actual and the benchmark or the standard or the target or quota. And we now determine if those are unfavorable or favorable. If favorable, so how can we sustain that and how can we improve further the operations? If unfavorable, so how can we change so that we can get the target next time and we close? So this is basically how management would look like. Resources are here. So from activities 1, 2, 3, and 4, so there are certain parameters or boundaries and so on. So there are conditions, the time and the cost, and the outcomes.
This is the, this is the table, the process, the cycles. So in planning, setting time, scope, and cost. Identify the project resources and the project outcome.
All right, so I think we all know about planning. So planning is the very first step of any management aspect or function or phase or cycle. And we all know that this would involve about, again, the resources to be consumed, the people who are involved, and then what certain transactions or processes are to be made. And also with our objectives, which are very important. What is to be highlighted here is the work breakdown structure, or WBS, which is basically about or similar to management by objectives, wherein we know the objectives and we know the specific resources that are involved. This is also very similar to the accounting information systems discussion about the REA model, resources, events, and agents. So who is responsible, the resources to be involved, how the work will proceed, and then what are the outputs and what are the factors that would prevent us from getting the objectives.
Then means all deliverable.
Okay, for a while, so we have to skip because anyway, you can see the specific items there as shown.
Projects.
Oh, so those are the tools which are used then. So Gantt charts, this is Gantt, by the way, not G-N-A-T-T. It's Gantt. It's basically like a table showing to us the activities and then the time. So the vertical would show the activities to be used. The horizontal would be showing to us the time. So let's say the time would be weeks or months or both. So for every month, you have the weeks below. So let's say for first week, this would be the activity that you will be doing. Or let's say for this activity, we need 2 weeks of the first month, like January. So we are going to place it there or color it or highlight it with certain colors. So that's what Gantt charts are. Such would be the schedules, or it is, or they are the charts or graphs that would show to us the activities and the targets in terms of the time or time periods that we would be able to complete or finish such activities. While the other items like CPA or the CPM would actually show to us the activities plus the constraining factors or the factors that would prevent us from attaining certain objectives for the business. The Microsoft project is a tool that would help us schedule, do the project management for the most beneficial way of the company. So it can also do like a lot of analysis, even like the Gantt charts type or the latter two. Anyway.
Projects. In monitoring, use benchmarks, milestones, and deliverables to track progress. The project manager must monitor the time scheduled and the activities. In controlling, concerns the development of specific actions aimed at keeping a project moving forward in the most efficient and effective manner possible, and expected issues, delays and problems. In closing, project manager needs to properly close out the project. So obtain client acceptance, they release and evaluate project personnel.
All right, so this is like the last part already. We are done with planning, then scheduling, monitoring, and then of course the last part is closing. So this is on the closing aspect that we are going to conduct the post-project evaluation, because we can never know if there are certain areas that are still not covered or we missed, or there are certain information that we have to go back before we are going to close this particular project.
Identify and reassign remaining project assets and conduct a post-project evaluation, and also they chronicle the history of the project. So, wait. This is the cycle. One is the project initiation, which is the project definition. Next is the project planning, which is the detailed planning. Third cycle is the project execution, which the monitoring and the control. And in the last step, where is the project closure, they pause and implementation and they review. Next, this is the system development life cycle, the life cycle phases. So, initiation. It begins when a sponsor identifies a need or an opportunity. Concept proposal is created. So, in the system concept development, define.
Right, so I think, anyway, the parts here are also readable by you guys. Anyway, for the SDLC, or the Systems Development Life Cycle phases, these are the steps towards the fulfillment of why we are making or developing or enhancing certain existing systems of the organization. So from initiation, the triggering point that certain needs have to be responded or problems to be solved, up to the point that the systems are to be disposed. So basically, these are the steps from the start to finish. Then if you're going to look, so the triggering point, the need for us to solve the problem, then we conceptualize, we plan. We now know what certain objectives that we have to answer to from initiation. Then we are going to plan now whatever resources that we need, and then who will be doing them, especially with the WBS, a while ago, work breakdown structure. Then the requirements analysis, what are the user needs or requirements? Design would be the detailed now requirements. So how do we make the systems and develop them? Then we have also to integrate, place the developed system to the existing system or to the running or live system of the company, for example. And then we test also the performance. I would say that performance of a particular system, then is it compliance with certain requirements internally in the organization or externally? Then implementation, once such system developed or the developed system is passable or is viable and feasible, then that has to be implemented to the operations of the business. Then we now have to operate, and of course we need to maintain to support that system. So of course you have known that the costs involved for support or maintenance actually are even higher than from planning to the implementation, and we now dispose. So basically those are the steps in or phases in SDLC.
Requirements includes acquire an operation maintenance cycle.
Right, so that's it for the part one or first part. Thank you very much, Miss April Rose, for sharing your inputs about these particular aspects. So for the readers, you may read, of course, the contents of the specific items here, but then I am already giving you the ideas that we can, of course, learn as to the specific contents. And anyhow, they are also readable. So thank you very much for staying with me. And then I'll see you next time for the continuation of this one. Thank you and God bless us all.